Letter C just wants us to be practical and to ask ourselves, if we want to find the fifth term in the sequence, which equation would be more valuable, the explicit or the recursive? So I need to think back at like what that means. If I needed to find the fifth term, what would it look like if I used the explicit equation? Now, as a reminder, an explicit equation would look like T of n equals, and I'm copying the equation from part A, 14 minus 5n. So if I was doing part E, which really is to find the fifth term, I would say T of 5, because fifth term, equals 14 minus 5 times 5, because n is the term number that you want. You want term number 5. So you would do the math. You would figure out what 5 times 5 is, and then do 14 minus that, and you'd find the fifth term. Now, if you wanted to use the recursive is basically like saying, hey, where am I and where do I go next? And I don't even know if I'd write the recursive. I would just think logically. If the recursive definition says, hey, subtract 5, and I already know up to the fourth term because they gave it to me, subtracting 5 is just like saying, well, subtract 5 from negative 6 and boom, you're done. So it might seem strange, like the recursive equation doesn't involve any work, but sometimes that's the beauty of a recursive equation, is you don't actually have to do any work if you know some of the terms nearby. Like if you know the fourth term, the fifth term's easy. If you know the fifth term, the sixth term's easy. If you know the sixth term, the seventh term is easy. Now, to contrast that, take a look at question letter D, because in question letter D, I don't know how valuable the recursive equation would be to find the 112th term. If I had to go all the way to the 112th term, think about how my table would have to build. I'd have to keep subtracting 5, subtracting 5, subtracting 5, subtracting 5, and that's going to get so old so fast. So I could see in letter D coming up with a better use of our explicit equation, because I would say T of, instead of n, 112, equals 14 minus 5 times 112. And I would find the answer probably with a calculator, but I would need a calculator because there's so many subtractions going on that really is necessary. So notice and compare. Do you find that the explicit equation is just as easy in letter C as it is in letter F? Because if so, you would answer questions C and D with the same answer. You would say both of them are explicit, and you can explain your reasoning. If you find one of them easier with explicit and the other one easier with recursive, or vice versa, then just explain why you do them differently. And if you find them both most valuable with recursive, explain why as well. Just try to make sense of when each one would be helpful, because that's kind of the main idea. The next task after this one, which is technically Wednesday's task if you're following along with the learning plan, is to do some review on pages 19 and 20. So just be prepared for that, because it is going to require you to have that flexibility, being able to go back and forth from explicit to recursive and vice versa is so important for these questions. And as always, use the answer key, and if you feel like you're conflicted somehow, don't forget to send me an email and I'll do the best I can to clarify.